We are a body like Bruce that brings you everything Bruce Lee. And we found this book in the public domain, public access, so no copyright infringement was intentional, and we bring it to all for educational purposes alone. Wrath of the Dragon, The Real Fights of Bruce Lee by John Little. Contents. Contents continued. Epilogue. What might have been a new school, assessing Bruce Lee's fighting status, boxers, kickboxers, karate champions, and mixed martial artists. Images. A snapshot of Bruce Lee's fighting and sparring record, and so forth. Epilogue. Bibliography, books and articles, acknowledgements, index about the author, etc. Epigraph. Come not between the dragon and his wrath. Shakespeare, from King Lear. Dedication to the fans. You were right all along. Prologue. I don't call the fighting in my films violence. I call it action. An action film borders somewhere between reality and fantasy. If I were to be completely realistic, you would call him a bloody violent man. He would simply destroy his opponent by tearing him apart or ripping his guts out. He wouldn't do it so artistically. Bruce Lee, Hong Kong, Standard, February 10, 1973. 1973 was an interesting year in America. The war in Vietnam ended. The Watergate scandal led all the way to the presidency. The first cell phone was invented by Motorola, and something called Kung Fu had crept into the nation's consciousness. The martial arts phenomenon was ignited by the Kung Fu television series, which premiered in October 1972. A mere 7 months later, it was the highest rating show in the country, with a viewership of 28 million households. The success of the series caught everyone completely by surprise, particularly the executives at Warner Brothers, the studio that produced the show. Sensing a trend in early 1973, the movie division of Warner Brothers purchased the North American distribution rights to a horrendously dubbed low-budget kung fu film produced by Hong Kong's Shaw Brothers Studios. It starred the Indonesian-born actor Lo Ler and went. It starred the Indonesian-born actor Lo Ler and went by the provocative title of Five Fingers of Death. When Warner Brothers released it into theatres in March 1973, it quickly went to number one at the box office. The genre, now proven to be a bona fide money maker, a glut of chop socky flicks, quickly followed, and soon in the theatres at least, the lyric from Carl Douglas's song "Everybody Was Kung Fu Fighting" appeared to be true. But not everybody who was kung fu fighting would become a global superstar. That honour was reserved for only one person, an American-born kung fu Wunderkind, a wonderful child in German, a wonder child, by the name of Bruce Lee. When Lee's movies hit the theatres, audiences were left spellbound, and an international martial arts craze was born. A one-man industry. Bruce Lee's sudden death in July 1973 at the age of 32, just prior to the release of his final film Into the Dragon, resulted in a worldwide fascination with the man that soon developed into an industry unto itself. Bookstores carried multiple titles devoted to him. Alex Ben Block's The Legend of Bruce Lee, Linda Lee's Bruce Lee, The Man Only I Knew, and Felix Zenas and Don Attia's Bruce Lee, King of Kung Fu were biographies that were read and reread multiple times by a rapidly growing fan base, pored over as thoroughly as others might study scripture, or religious scripture like the Bible, etc. Magazines such as Fighting Stars, Black Belt, Deadly Hands of Kung Fu, Official Karate and Inside Kung Fu, and many others that came into and passed from existence during the 1970s were purchased, often multiple copies of the same issue at a time, as they were certain to feature articles on Lee almost every month. And when books and magazines weren't coming out in sufficient quantity to feed the voracious appetite of Lee's fans to learn more about the late martial arts superstar. Some would travel to the respective cities, Chinatown districts, to visit the bookstore. Most of these stores had magazines and later poster magazines that had been imported from Hong Kong, featuring photos and stories that the publications in the West didn't have access to. These, likewise, were consumed in a ravenous desire to learn more and more about Bruce Lee. Walls of bedrooms soon were bedecked with posters of the man, representing international shrines to his burgeoning legacy. Indeed, Lee was the first image his fans saw upon opening their eyes in the morning, and the last image they saw before they closed them at night. From the books, magazines and posters proceeded the martial arts schools, which began to mushroom on street corners and in strip malls, and outside of formal classes, on schoolyards and in basements. An army of Bruce Lee wannabes filled the air around them with kicks and punches, aping the movements the hero had displayed in his movies, which seemed to reappear in theatres several times a year during the mid-1970s. The author knew this because he was one of those people. When the wait in between theatrical releases of his films was over, he'd sneak an 8mm and later a Super 8mm sound camera into the movie theatres and scrunch down in a seat to avoid detection. He'd filmed the master in action. Weeks later, after Kodak had developed his film, he'd spent innumerable hours studying the biomechanics of Bruce Lee's kicks and punches, often frame by frame, until he better understood how he used his body to execute such a dazzling repertoire of martial arts techniques. When a karate school opened down the street from his house, he begged his parents for the money to enroll him, which they graciously did. The dojo had a black and white poster near the change rooms depicting Lee in a martial stance from Enter the Dragon, which served to further inspire all as they received instruction in the arts. To him, John Little, and the tens of thousands like him, Bruce Lee was the greatest fighter of all time, bar none. But then came the backlash, and it started within the very dojos that displayed his posters. The instructors, perhaps not wishing to share the respect and adulation of their students with a dead practitioner of a different martial art than the one they represented, pointed out that Lee had never fought in martial arts competitions. Indeed, there was no record of him having fought anybody at all. Such opinions carried weight. They were, after all, uttered by black belts who had put years into the very arts that they were now training in. Soon Lee's legend of martial arts supremacy began to erode. It seemed more were against him than for him. Eventually all his fans were left with was the image of a movie actor who engaged in choreographed scuffles on the screen, a man who was all form and no substance. Some seriously damaging blows to Lee's image came when karate tournament champions Bob Wall and Chuck Norris, both of whom had supporting roles in Lee's 1972 film The Way of the Dragon, began to run him down in the American press. Wall said Bruce was very, very insecure. He had no confidence. At 136 pounds, he sure wasn't going to take and beat any Joe Louis or Chuck Norris. For his part, Norris told American talk show host David Brenner in 1986, "The thing is, I was a fighter. I fought for years. Bruce never competed. He never fought professionally, and he didn't get in the ring and fight these top people, right?" So this video by Beatty saying, "Oh, it's Bruce Lee in the ring with Chuck Norris," man, that rubbish. Because if you look at it, if that was Bruce Lee, he would have been bam, 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 and knocked the guy down, right? In a matter of seconds, if he was all fit, etc. At that time, he wouldn't have mucked around. That Wall, as Chuck Norris says, he never competed, he never fought professionally. Well, as we said in another video, he didn't do point for point contact. He was all out, wham bam, defeating the person. No rules, no limits. He didn't believe in that point to point, no contact system, because fighting's not like that. Yeah, it's like one-on-one bam. That Wall and Norris had only ever competed in non-contact point karate tournaments was a fact that neither man brought to the attention of the respective interviewers. It didn't matter. And when another national karate champion, the aforementioned Joe Louis, who was world champion in both point karate and full contact karate, threw his hat into the ring, describing Lee as a little Chinese actor, not a fighter, the damage was done. In the martial arts world, Bruce Lee wasn't a real fighter. So these people like turned on him after his death, probably to promote themselves, right? Undermining him. Cinematic tough guys. It must be said that Wall's and Norris's proposition wasn't an unbelievable one. After all, movie actors seldom turn out to be as tough in real life as they appear in the movies. A case in point would be Sylvester Stallone, a man who reignited interest in the sport of boxing during the mid-1970s when he wrote and starred in the movie Rocky. His performance was so believable that most fans believed Stallone could really box. Even he believed it right up until he made Rocky 2. You see that TV program that he did, and he was teaching other people how to box and all that sort of stuff. It's like he ran out of breath. He had trouble, right? You could see it. That was when he decided he had what it took to step into the ring to spar with Roberto Duran, the Panamanian fighter who is generally considered to be the greatest lightweight boxer of all time. Duran left the Italian stallion swinging at nothing but air while peppering the actor with punches that left him helpless. So he was useless. At first he thought this would be pretty interesting because he was a few pounds heavier, a little taller. Stallone recalled of the experience. And then he realised the difference between amateur and consummate pro. The way he could move his head just an inch, it's impossible to hit him. This man would demolish Stallone in the ring. Put it this way, if there was a fight, the fight would be 11 seconds including the count. And he'd be flat on his ass. Some years later, Stallone evidently forgot the lesson that Duran had taught him and made the mistake of thinking that he was up to swapping real punches in his fight scene with professional kickboxer Dolph Lundgren in the movie Rocky IV. Lundgren obliged, and Stallone ended up in the intensive care unit of a Los Angeles hospital. As the years the bloom comes off the rose. As the years passed, more martial artists found their voices and echoed Wall, Norris and Lewis' criticism of Bruce Lee. While these same people had welcomed the influx of new students that Lee's image had brought into their martial arts schools, businesses, they now believed that no longer had they need of him. Their martial arts expertise was more than sufficient to run a successful studio, and Bruce Lee was simply a distraction from the business at hand. Lee's fans were cowed into silence. Who were they to argue with America's most decorated martial arts champions? When pressed, Lee's fans had to admit that they didn't have any evidence that the hero had fought for real. Sure, there were stories circulated that Lee had won a few fights in his youth, but who hadn't? Such minor league skirmishes were grossly insufficient evidence to warrant a belief that he was the greatest fighter of any era, let alone of all time. Although their numbers were diminishing, there were still those who remained steadfast in their belief that their eyes had not deceived them, that what they'd witnessed Lee do in his movies in terms of skill, speed, power and agility wouldn't simply evaporate in a real-life encounter. Indeed, the very thought seemed nonsensical to them. Nevertheless, by the late 1970s, the global fanaticism for Bruce Lee had waned. His films were no longer making the rounds of movie theatres with any degree of regularity, and he was not being talked about with the same reverence that he once was within the various martial arts schools that were then thriving in major cities all over Europe and North America. Moreover, while Lee had taught dozens of people his approach to martial art over the years, locating an instructor of his art was like finding a needle in a haystack. Indeed, there are only two people in the entire world who were actively teaching Bruce Lee's art at the time: Dan Inosanto in Los Angeles and Taki Kimura in Seattle. By contrast, there were more than 1,200 Taekwondo instructors in the United States alone. The martial arts had become big business. Every martial arts school was competing with other schools for revenue and being outnumbered by several thousand instructors to two. Bruce Lee's art was gradually getting lost in the din of the marketplace. Some of Lee's students, most notably Seattle's Jesse Glover and California's Dan Inosanto, wrote books in which they testified to their late teacher's considerable fighting prowess, but because these books were available only through mail order, their audience was largely Bruce Lee fans who didn't need much convincing on the matter. And apart from these fans, the word didn't spread very far. During the many years of the author's love-hate relationship with martial arts, he had witnessed a lot of street fights as well as amateur and professional fights, and he'd been a judge for the Ultimate Fighting Championship UFC. He was even involved in a few altercations himself, which quickly convinced him that as a fighter he made a pretty good rider. He's come to learn over the years that a good fighter not only has to be skillful in techniques of hurting people, but when fighting another person who is similarly skilled, they must possess certain elements of dexterity. Coordination, balance, timing, speed, power, mobility, and ability to fight through anxiety, often pain, courage, perception, reflex, reaction, and self-confidence. Most of us possess some of these attributes. Real fighters own a good number of them. World-class fighters possess all of these. Did Bruce Lee have these attributes, or were the long-standing assessments of Wall, Norris, and Lewis correct? John Little, or this author, wanted to find out. He sought answers. By the early 1990s, he found himself living in California and working for bodybuilding mogul Joe Weider, possibly the man that made Arnold Schwarzenegger the musclehead that he was in his younger days. Apparently, we read somewhere that they were travelling somewhere and Arnold wouldn't stop talking, and Joe Weider told him to shut the F up. Right? Joe employed the author as a writer to write articles for the various magazines. He published such as Muscle and Fitness, Shape, Men's Fitness, and Flex. It was there that an opportunity to interview Bruce Lee's students and friends presented itself. He suggested to his editor-in-chief that he wanted to write an article for Muscle and Fitness about Bruce Lee's training and bodybuilding methods. After all, while his fighting ability might have been called into question, it was undeniable that he had a very impressive physique. His editor-in-chief thought it was a good idea, and he was given the green light to proceed. It was an article that he truly looked forward to writing, as it gave him the opportunity to seek out and communicate with people who not only knew how Lee trained, but also if he could really fight. He went at his research like a man possessed and interviewed everyone and anyone who knew, worked or studied with Bruce Lee, those who were with him in Hong Kong in the 1950s, his friends and private students in Seattle in 1959, those who studied his real-life fighting art privately and directly from him, or at his modest-sized schools in Seattle, Oakland, and Los Angeles throughout the 1960s, and those who knew and worked alongside him when he made his movies in Hong Kong from 1971 to 1973. From this preliminary sampling sprang additional research. Some of it culled from trips to Hong Kong, others from forays into San Francisco, Oakland, Los Angeles, and Seattle. In analysing all his testimony, a far different picture of Bruce Lee's real-world fighting ability slowly came into focus, one that stood in sharp contrast to the one his naysayers had painted over the decades. What follows then is the street record of Bruce Lee, related by those who were there and witnessed it first hand. A note on the text. The term Kung Fu doesn't necessarily have a martial arts connection. It's a generic term, supposedly, that's used to describe the skill and excellence obtained after years of dedicated study in any field, right? Therefore, it can be applied to any skill cultivated through hard work and constant practice. Here, both Kung Fu, Wade Gao spelling, and Gong Fu, Pinyin spelling, are used to indicate the Chinese martial arts generally, but Kung Fu is also employed as a part of terms for Pacific styles of martial arts such as Wing Chun Kung Fu and Northern Shaolin Kung Fu. When Bruce Lee employed the term, he used the Pinyin spelling, Kung Fu, but the two versions should be taken as interchangeable. Chapter 1, The Concrete Jungle. It should be remembered that violence and aggression is part of everyday life now. You can't just pretend that it does not exist. Bruce Lee, New Nation, Singapore, August 15, 1972. In 2009, the author found himself standing in the principal's office at St. Francis Xavier's College in Hong Kong. He hadn't been summoned there for misbehaviour, rather he was told to wait in the office while the vice principal, Joseph Liu, searched for something in a back room. St. Francis Xavier is a Catholic secondary school for boys, one of no less than 85 Catholic secondary schools in Hong Kong. The school was constructed in 1955 when it relocated from Shanghai, China, once the communist takeover on the mainland threatened the existence of Christian educational institutions. Here, students are taught their lessons primarily in English, but Chinese and other languages are also spoken. It's a big school featuring a large central building that stands 5 stories high. It goes on about that. These structures are set atop some 35,251 square feet of prime real estate in Kowloon, Hong Kong's most populous area, and so forth. And then Mr. Liu comes back holding a manila folder in his hand. He opened it and flipped through a few pages. Finally, his focus rested on one particular piece within the folder. There it is, he said, as he turned the folder around to show the author the object of his attention. He looked to see a photograph that had been stapled onto the lower left corner of an 8 by 10 inch sheet of faded white cardboard. It was a student record from 53 years ago. Various categories were typed on the card, along with statements written in blue ballpoint pen. The date of the student's admission was indicated 10 September 1956. That put the age of the boy in the photo 2 months shy of his 16th birthday. The image revealed the face of an apparently happy, handsome, clean-cut young man. He noted that the date entered as his birth year was wrong, 27 November 1941. He knew that the boy was actually born in 1940, which in Chinese culture would be the year of the dragon. If he had been born a year later, 1941, it would have been in the year of the snake. Not a chance. Even if he hadn't previously seen his birth certificate from a hospital in San Francisco, this kid was a dragon, perhaps the most famous dragon of all time. There was an additional writing on the paper indicating the boy's name, address and phone number. It also contained the assessment, poor student, and appraisal that was evidently made by the principal of La Salle College, to the high school he had transferred in from. He was surprised that St. Francis Xavier still had his record in the files. After all, it was from over half a century ago. Tens of thousands of students had come and gone since the time of this student's arrival. Despite the boy's lowly academic assessment, the staff at St. Francis Xavier's College spoke of him with pride. Not one, but 2 vice principals, along with the current day administrator, then entered the principal's office and stood alongside the author, craning their necks to have a look at the lad's student card. They were quick to bring up the fact that the boy once won an inter-school boxing championship on behalf of the school just 2 years after he had enrolled there. It was a major point of pride for them, which surprised the author, since it had little to do with anything of an academic nature, which of course is the very purpose of the school. In truth, 3 St. Francis Xavier students competed in the inter-school boxing tournament in 1958, but the boy in the photo was the only student who brought home a gold medal from the competition. It might well have been a moment in time long since forgotten, just like the names of the other student boxers from St. Francis Xavier's that competed alongside him that day. But for the significance of the name of the boy in the photograph, Bruce Lee. Bruce's transfer to St. Francis Xavier's occurred shortly after his expulsion from La Salle College, another Catholic secondary school in the same district, and his removal had been immediate. Psychologists might find a case study in the teenage Bruce Lee, what with all the fights and hyper-macho mischief that he used to engage in during this period. They might even conclude that what drove him to such behaviour would continue to serve as a psychological spur to continue fighting well into the final years and months of his life. It seemed that Bruce was always trying to prove his masculinity to the world, and if one looks even further back into history, one might conclude that he was always perhaps trying to prove it to himself. Yes, because some person along the way said to him, "You're not a man, you'll never be a man," all this sort of stuff. So he went all out to prove that he was masculine, that he was a man, and he did it so well. In 1983, another Albert Goldman, author Albert Goldman, best known for his scathing biographies of Elvis Presley, Elvis 1981, and John Lennon, The Lives of John Lennon 1988, made Bruce Lee the subject of a 2-part article that appeared in Penthouse, it's a men's magazine. As per Goldman's modus operandi, his whole objective, his mode of operation, the picture he painted of Bruce Lee was decidedly negative. One statement from the article was particularly ignorant. The Eastern Bruce Lee, to phrase it bluntly, put balls on 400 million Chinamen. The assertion drew a sharp rebuke from Bruce Lee's friends and student Dan Inosanto, who rightly condemned its content. Goldman's statement was patently false, of course, as the Chinese male population totaled 458,760,000 in that year that Bruce Lee's last film was released. A rather clear indication that Chinese males had no need of Bruce's help in the cojones department, or the balls department. However, his taking aim at that particular region of Bruce's anatomy was not without significance, particularly in the light of the fact that Bruce was born with an undistended testicle, a condition known as cryptorchidism. It was a condition that would majorly impact certain periods of his life. For example, it was the reason he was declared unfit by the Washington State Draft Board for induction into the Army during the Vietnam War, a decision that might well have saved his life. and at the very least saved him from the severe psychological trauma that so many of the soldiers who returned home from the war had to endure. However, this condition, working in conjunction with the other issues of a psychological and environmental nature, would serve as a strong impetus for Bruce to seek to define his own sense of masculinity over the years. In other words, and contrary to Goldman's claim, Bruce Lee would be far too busy putting balls on himself to worry about attaching them to the remainder of the male Chinese population. And he goes into his birth, his biological history. His house family dressed him up as a girl to keep evil spirits away. They wanted to take his life, all this sort of stuff. The lure of Tai Chi. Bruce's love affair with the martial arts began when he was around 10. His father was a devotee of Tai Chi Chuan, and had studied it under the tutelage of Liang Ziping, 1900 to 1974. Young Bruce often watched Hui Chuan, his father, performing its slow circular movements and listened intently as his father read aloud to him passages from fighting novels and magazines that praised the ancient Tai Chi masters. He drank this up, particularly the stories of the Tai Chi practitioners, almost superhuman powers that were able to repel people without touching them. Also inspiring were the tales of weaker people beating stronger people, older people defeating younger people, and Tai Chi defeating all of the more aggressive styles of Chinese self-defense. Bruce's young mind was also struck by the yin-yang philosophy that underpins the art, and how all things arise out of the Tai Chi, or grand. Terminus. The eternal energy of the universe, and exist in an interdependent relationship with everything else. On the surface, and even more deeply, it made perfect sense. What we think of as opposites cannot exist without their counterparts. Without night, what is day? Without up, what is down? Without female, what is male? Moreover, the black dot in the white portion of the yin-yang symbol and the white dot in its black portion symbolise this mutual interdependence. In the purest strain of one, there exists a tiny bit of its opposite. Thus, within every saint is the touch of that devil, and vice versa. The symbol further represents that if any single attribute is carried to its ultimate extreme, it will morph into its opposite. This is the basic Chinese understanding of the Tao, or way of nature, which was said to be set down in 400 BC by a mysterious figure by the name of Lao Tzu. In chapter 2 of the Tao Te Ching, Lao Tzu states, "When the people of the earth all know beauty is beauty, there arises the recognition of ugliness. When the people of the earth all know the good as good, there arises the recognition of evil. Therefore, being and non-being interdepend in growth. Difficult and easy interdepend in completion. Long and short interdepend in contrast. High and low interdepend in position. Tones and voice interdepend in harmony. Front and behind interdepend in company." That is, a fighting art could be based on such a mind-blowing philosophy captivated Bruce. Yin-yang philosophy would forever after be his martial arts touchstone. Delighted in his son's interest in the art, Li Hui Chen taught him the 108 movements of the Tai Chi form, which Bruce gradually came to perfect. He could recite from memory the name of each movement within the form, all the while believing in the power of Qi, the internal energy that the masters of Tai Chi Chuan were said to possess and could infuse into their techniques at will. Bruce would soon have the opportunity to put his daily practice of the art to the test. His first fight, he's fighting some students from a different school, an argument. He stepped on the foot of somebody, right? An argument ensued. Suddenly the boys were surrounded by students from both schools who were now urging him to settle this dispute with their fists. Being pressured by the crowd, the two retired to a nearby playing field to have it out. The other student, much bigger and heavier, looked on Bruce as Bruce stretched out his arms and began going through the movements of the Tai Chi forms, calling out the names of each posture to the crowd. This certainly looked and sounded impressive, not only to those who had gathered around the pair, but also to his opponent, who was now beginning to have second thoughts about what he had just got himself into. Growing impatient for the fight to commence, the classmates of the larger student pushed him towards Bruce to get things started. The lad smashed into Bruce, terminating his performance of the Tai Chi form and knocking him down. The spell of Bruce's martial wizardry was now broken. The student promptly sat on Bruce's chest, pinning him to the ground. The larger boy rained down punches on defenseless Bruce in a more primitive version of what MMA aficionados would refer to as ground and pound. So he lost his first weight there, right? Okay, so he ended up in Hong Kong's prestigious Catholic secondary school, South College. Unfortunately for his teachers, he was killed there. Chip on his shoulder, and was constantly looking for opportunities to assert himself and prove his masculinity. He was angry, recalled Robert Wang, a former classmate of Bruce's at LaSalle. He had a reputation as a troublemaker and was involved in so many fights that he was summoned to see the principal frequently. He drew other boys to him in crowded Kowloon that were of a similar disposition. Some of the kids had formed their own street gang, the Eight Tigers of Junction Street. The more pedestrian names of certain of the gang members were John, Robbie and Ao Chun. The more intriguing names were Kings, Big Mouth, Lunny, One-Eyed and Speedy. Sensing a kindred spirit in Bruce, they invited him to join their gang. Bruce accepted without hesitation. However, apart from the natural rebelliousness of youth, the teenagers had other reasons to band together. And so forth. And then he must have started to learn from Yip Man. And he meets William Chu, who, at Bruce's prompting, brought him to Yip Man's Wing Chun school to meet the master. Wang Shun Lung, the school's top fighter, remembered laying eyes on Bruce for the first time. He practiced his Kung Fu at Master Yip's Institute. He also helped to instruct the students. At that time, William Chung brought in an Elvis-like youngster. He leaned his body to one side with his hand on the wall. The other hand was in the back pocket of his trousers. His body was supported by one of his legs only. He swayed his body continuously. His manner was very frivolous, as though he had thought he was smart. He really did not like his appearance. After he went away, he told Chung that he did not welcome this young man. Apart from Wong, there was another obstacle that Bruce needed to overcome before he could start his training at Yip Man School: his parents, and so forth. And his mother convinced her father to let him start there. Yip Man was actually eager to accept Bruce Lee as a student. Not only had he seen several of Bruce's films, his younger days were at the Orphan, etc. Celebrity students then, like now, are always good for business, but Bruce's enrolment would also mean that an additional $8 Hong Kong a month would soon be coming Yip's way in the form of Bruce's membership fees. While there is a belief in the West that the Chinese art of Kung Fu in its purest form has always been free from the taint of money, the reality is that ever since Kung Fu lessons were taught to the public, money had been changing hands. While living off Foshan, Yip Man had been required to pay 20 taels of silver to be accepted as a student of Chan Hua Shun, and then another 8 taels of silver a month for his Wing Chun lessons. Bruce began his lessons as soon as his mother's cash was in Yip Man's pocket. During the first lessons, he proved himself to be a model student, but that all changed in the third session, according to Yip Man's son, Yip Chun. And he's probably about 80 or something now. As a rule, his father did not like to teach new students immediately, so after the procedure of accepting them, the first lesson was taught by senior Wing Chun student Yip Po Ching. On the third day after the first lesson, Bruce finally caused some trouble. Early in the day, Bruce came to find Yip Po Ching to practice sticky hands or chi sao in Cantonese, a Wing Chun tactile sensitivity drill. They put their full attention at it, but suddenly, without letting other people know, Bruce sent out a kick. Yip was a bit older. Moreover, he was not expecting it, so he was hurt. Fortunately, Bruce was willing to apologise on that day. William Chung explained for Bruce Lee. Otherwise, Bruce would be discharged from the school. That misstep behind him, Bruce took to his Wing Chun training as though his life depended on it. There's the key. Okay. If you've got some sort of talent or skill that you want to perfect, be the best at, you want to succeed at, these are your key. Act as if your life depended on it. Not a day went by when he wasn't practicing. Another key. As a result of such diligent training, he improved rapidly, so rapidly in fact that he was soon surpassing many of Yip Man's most senior students, many of whom had been studying Wing Chun for several years. While such rapid improvements was impressive, Bruce's dedication to Wing Chun didn't make him any less bellicose, or well liked probably, or popular. During a gym class at La Salle College, the school's physical education teacher decided to take his students outside and have them run 3 laps of the school's soccer field. When students slacked off or didn't run as quickly as he wished, he whacked them on the back of their legs with a ruler. The sting of the ruler on a bare leg seldom failed to produce the desired effect. That is until he whacked Bruce in the hamstrings. Instead of picking up his stride, Bruce wheeled around and glared at the teacher, and then pulled out his switchblade. The gym teacher's eyes widened in terror, and he took off running as fast as he could in the opposite direction, with Bruce in hot pursuit. He ran into the principal's office before Bruce caught up with him. This was the last straw. Bruce Lee was immediately expelled from La Salle College. And his parents were shocked, so they sent him to another school, St. Francis Xavier's. And here's the upstart. When I first learned martial art, I too have challenged many established instructors, and of course some others challenged me also. Bruce Lee, Radio Hong Kong, 1971. Yip Man was impressed with Bruce's dedication. He would later tell his son Yip Chun about the numerous times he had looked out from his window to observe Bruce Lee throwing kicks and vertical fist punches while walking towards his school, or performing Wing Chun hand techniques such as circling hand, Wen Xiao, Sao, pulling hand, Lop Sao, and darting hand, Piu Sao. Other students from the Wing Chun school saw Bruce walking through the streets carrying a pair of dumbbells and throwing punches while holding them. Even at home, Bruce pounded stools on either side of him with his fists to strengthen his arms and toughen his hands. You read about that. He sat at the table while eating dinner to strengthen his hands. Yip Man appreciated that Bruce was never a pussy student. He never grew impatient, drilling on fundamental techniques over and over and over, and never demanded more of his teacher and senior instructors than they were willing to give. He would stay on one technique for weeks and months until he mastered it, recalled William Chung. So just with that quality, it made Yip Man like him. He was very, very dedicated. When Bruce wasn't training at Yip Man's school, he was training with William Chung, Grandmaster William Chung. I think he moved to Australia. I went to his classes there, and we studied under his traditional Wing Chun Kung Fu before we moved and went to another larger city in our country, and there they did modified, and there's a political problem there. One says, oh, they're doing it wrong, etc, etc. It's all money orientated, all this sort of stuff. Yes, we felt, that it's very political, as other people have written. Between, there's these arguments between schools. Oh no, we're teaching the right way, you're not, all this sort of stuff. Oh, Grandmaster William Ching, oh yeah, all this sort of stuff. Nah, Lung Ting was better with this, sort of stuff going on. When Bruce wasn't training at Yip Man School, he was training with William Chung. The two young men were inseparable during 1956 and 1957. In the 1950s, they were training 1,000 punches, 500 kicks every day, Chung recalled. Most of their training sessions were over 4 hours non-stop, and one of the main things that they trained was that they repeated each technique until they mastered it, so they never tried to skip something, and so their basic foundation was so good that it made them superior to all the other martial artists. Similarly impressed with Bruce's dedication to Wing Chun was Wang Shun Lung, who by this point had been studying the art for 5 years under Yip Man's guidance. Apart from having good potential, he also paid attention to the use of equipment and training himself. Under his advice, he had made 2 steel bars to strengthen the power of his wrists. When he had time, he would train with his bars. This helped a lot in increasing his punching power. The thing he practiced every day included punching, side kicks, and training on the wooden dummy. When he had finished with all this, he would sit down and meditate on what he had done. He trained himself in this way for a long time. So this is another perfect example. If you're training for something, practice it, and then sit back and ponder it, meditate on it. How can you perfect it? How can you make it better? How can you be successful? What can you do differently? And so forth. Frank Clausenitzer, a student at St. Francis Xavier's College, was one of the number of students who would gather around the little dragon at recess or their breaks to watch him practicing his Wing Chun moves. Occasionally, Bruce would teach them some of the techniques from the art. Frank's older brother Rolf recalled once getting yanked off his feet and having his arms completely locked up when Frank performed the Wing Chun pulling hand technique on him that he learned from Bruce earlier that day. And in 2 weeks, so obviously he could teach that, right? And in 2 weeks later, Rolf recalled meeting a 17-year-old Bruce Lee for the first time. So his brother, impressed by that sticky hands, chi sao, etc., went to see Bruce Lee himself. Frank brought home this wizard and introduced him as Bruce Lee, Chun Fan. It was the one and only time he met Bruce face to face, but he recalls he was clean cut, well groomed, about his height but considerably lighter. He began by demonstrating what he reckoned was part of the Si Lum Dao form. It's a small hand form. This had the same effect on him as it had on countless people since who knew nothing about Wing Chun, and very exciting and somewhat puzzling. Then came the mind-blowing experience, which was to confirm his interest in Wing Chun that his brother had aroused a few weeks earlier with his own little demo. Bruce invited him to spar with him, assuring him that he wouldn't get hurt. He asked him to bring his arms in contact with his, turned his head through 180 degrees so that he couldn't see him, and he gave him the go-ahead to box, to go for his face and chest. He tried for what seemed like a minute to score, but he deflected and trapped every jab, hook, cross, and uppercut he threw, and his fist kept ending up under his nose. He realised now that what he was doing to him was blindfolded chi sao, sticking hands of a very high order. Bruce was very troubled at this point in his life, in the sense that if anyone of his family, or any of his family, gang members or fellow Wing Chun students were suffering an impertinence, he didn't think twice about heading out to track down and fight the person who had caused it. When his younger brother Robert accidentally touched a soccer ball during a match on a nearby field, one of the players punched him in the stomach. Robert ran home and told Bruce, who immediately hit the streets and the local soccer fields looking for the culprit. He never found him, but Robert recalled that Bruce let out a string of Cantonese curse words that made him proud. Bruce was very protective of him and the rest of the family, Robert recalled. When a member of the 8 Tigers of Junction Street was jumped and beaten up by 2 members from a rival gang, Bruce again went out to hunt down the ones who did it. When he spotted the 2 gang members, he approached them as if to talk, but as soon as he got close enough, he suddenly lashed out and punched both of them, knocking them down. There's no record of the street gang ever bothering any member of the Tigers of Junction Street again. Wing Chun tough guy. By 1957, Bruce had cultivated a serious disdain for practitioners of Chinese Kung Fu who didn't train as hard as he, Wang Shung Lung and William Chung did. He particularly grew to detest the teachers of these arts who seldom trained at all, possessed no fighting experience, and attracted students to the schools solely as a result of the legends and reputations of the respective arts. If he saw such teachers performing in the parks of Hong Kong, he often felt obliged to confront them. On one such occasion, he saw a crowd gathering around a teacher who was demonstrating the Tai Chi form. The master announced that when he sank his chi into his lower Dan Dien, one of the energy centers located in the lower part of the body, it's probably just below the navel there, as taught in certain of the internal styles of Kung Fu, he could withstand a punch from anybody and ask for a volunteer to help him demonstrate. Bruce stepped forward. When the master set his stance and sank his chi, Bruce promptly cracked him in the ribs. The teacher collapsed to the ground where he writhed and moaned. Bruce stood over the man and glared at him. "Next time, don't show off." Bruce then turned and made his way through a crowd of startled onlookers. As Bruce was now a loyal member of the Wing Chun clan, his attitude toward rival schools of Kung Fu was what one might expect from a teenager who wanted desperately to raise his stock in the eyes of his fellow practitioners. However, it was also an attitude that lacked deference and respect, 2 qualities that young men were expected to show older men within Chinese culture. When one of his Wing Chun classmates, whom we only know by the surname of Ng, came to class one afternoon complaining that a master from a different Kung Fu clan had challenged him to a fight, Bruce automatically responded that he would take him on. Wong Shunlung heard what was said and what Bruce planned to do about it. However, Wong happened to know the master from the other school, a certain Shifu Li, and believed that he was suffering from a misunderstanding. Wong knew Master Li to be an honourable and humble man, certainly not the kind of person to instigate fights between Kung Fu schools. However, before he could offer an opinion, Bruce approached him. "We're having a match on Saturday. I'm fighting him." "What match?" Has the other side agreed to this, and to a specific date and place? Bruce shook his head. "But I know where Li teaches on Saturday mornings." He gestured towards several Wing Chun students standing nearby. "Will we meet him there?" "Or we'll meet you there. You know that man who issued the challenge?" "What man? Who made this proposal?" "It's Li. He made the proposal." Wong wasn't convinced. "I can't believe Li challenging me. He's a good man. I've met him. He's not the kind to cause any trouble." But Bruce wasn't to be dissuaded. While Wong was sceptical, he also didn't want to discourage him, if in fact Master Li had issued such a challenge. It was, after all, a Wing Chun student's duty to defend the school. "Don't force Li," Wong counselled. "It's only okay by me if he agrees to fight. I don't want to destroy your plan, so I'll come, but I'll look on from a distance." Bruce smiled. "If I'm there, he will fight," he said. "Just wait and see." While Wong reluctantly agreed with Bruce's plan, he also resolved to head down to Master Li's compound on the morning of the match, just in case the problem might be avoided. By 8 a.m. Saturday, Bruce Lee and 8 of his Wing Chun brothers were on the march to Lee's training area, which turned out to be a deserted house next to a railway track. Wong Shun Lung followed the group from a distance. As the Wing Chun brigade drew closer, they spotted Master Li and 12 of his students training in the front yard of the house. Wong looked on as Bruce broke away from his group, made his way into the yard and stood before Li and his students. Placing his hands on his hips, he announced, "Hey, who is the one that wants to fight? Let me satisfy your desire. Quick, I don't have much time." Wong noted a look of puzzlement on Master Li's face. "We will not fight," Li said. The teacher turned and walked away. The students followed. "You cowards," Bruce yelled, hoping to rile up the Kung Fu master. "Yeah, go home. Why do you even practice Kung Fu? You are not a man. You challenged us to a fight. And I'm not a patient man. I won't wait." Sensing that his words weren't having the desired effect, Bruce chased after Master Li. He caught up to the man and positioned himself in front of him to block his way, and stared at him. He made a gesture that was meant to insult the teacher. Master Li made no response. He obviously had total control there. But Bruce wasn't to be dissuaded. Okay, Master Li made no response. Bruce now began to mock the man. He broke into a dance, but he pretended to shake in fear. "Oh, I beg you," he exclaimed sarcastically. "Have mercy on me. When that didn't work, he offered a new challenge to the master. I'll let you beat me up. I won't fight back, okay? You don't have to be afraid. I like you. Come on, let's start." Master Li was clearly embarrassed by the young man's actions. Spotting Wong Shung Lung looking on from afar, the old teacher walked over to him. The two men shook hands. "Mr. Wong, have you done anything wrong?" Li asked. "Since we are friends, you can tell me frankly. I respect you and I don't want to have any misunderstanding." Now Wong was the one who was embarrassed. Master Li clearly had not challenged anybody. Bruce piped up again. "Lung, please ask him to fight with me. If you do, I'll invite you out to dinner tonight." Wong Shun Lung looked at him with daggers in his eyes. He marched over to Bruce and took hold of him firmly by the arm. "Bruce, cool down," he said in a harsh whisper. "Listen to me. You should not force people to fight. Your behaviour is not very good. If other people learn of it, they will think that we are rough and rude. If Master Yip finds out about this, he won't be happy. It is useless to provoke Li." Bruce shrugged his shoulders. Wong returned to Master Li and placed his hand reassuringly on the old man's shoulder. "These youngsters are still green, and some of them just want to see how people fight. That is why they make so much nonsense. Forgive them for my sake. I don't want to hurt our relationship. If there is anything wrong, come and tell me." "Yeah, that's right," Li replied. "We are all members of the Chinese martial arts family. I know that you, Mr. Wong, are a good man. I hope we'll have more interactions in the future." And with that, Master Li turned to leave. Bruce rolled his eyes at what was now playing out. Rather than putting the instruction in his place, Wong Shung Lung had instead calmed the waters. The fight was off. Bruce walked over to one of his fellow Wing Chun students and pulled the young man's arm up into a fighting stance. Then he pretended that he was Master Li. He walked as though he was drunk, and when a light strike from the student hit his chest, Bruce dramatically fell to the ground and flaired his limbs as though convulsing. As insulting and juvenile as Bruce's behaviour was, Wong actually found himself stifling a chuckle at the performance. Lee's acting was good, he later recalled with a laugh. By now, Master Lee and students had left the premises, which allowed Wong to relax a little bit. Still, the incidents did nothing to endear Bruce Lee to the long-established Hong Kong martial arts community. When word reached Yip Man about the encounter, he somewhat facetiously named Bruce Lee upstart, but never reprimanded him. Not that Bruce Lee cared. His sole interest in formally studying Kung Fu was to improve his fighting skills, and he was pissed at an opportunity to teach himself in action against the master of another clan that slipped through his fingers. And it looks like he might have got banished on there. They wanted Bruce Lee off the scene out of the school, and the sooner the better. The problem was that none of them had the means to best him in a fight, and by most reports, Yip Man was fond of the little dragon. But a little digging on the senior student part revealed an opening that could be exploited. Bruce's mother, Grace, was discovered wasn't a full-blooded. Okay, that's when they figured out that she's part German, Bruce Lee's part German, all this sort of stuff. So, traditionally, they couldn't teach a foreigner martial arts, so that was the excuse to have him out of the scene, off the scene, right? Out of the school, all this sort of stuff. Teaching foreigners and non-Chinese was something that could get a martial arts instructor in trouble within its community. It simply wasn't done. Knowing this, a band of Wing Chun students approached Yip Man and laid out the evidence that Bruce Lee was, at best, only 3/4 Chinese, and that he had to go for the good of the reputations of both Yip Man and the school. Reluctantly, William Chung later recalled, Yip Man told Bruce Lee to go. Bruce would never forgive his Wing Chun brothers for having him kicked out of Yip Man's school. The decision to banish Bruce from his school had been a problematic one for Yip Man. Not only had he liked Bruce, but he had long been good friends with Lee's father, Lee Hoi Jun. To kick his friend's son out of the school, and to do so because Lee's grandmother on his mother's side had been Occidental, she's German, right, was an insult to Hoi Jun's family. To mitigate this problem, Yip Man came up with a way to keep Bruce in the arts and still satisfy the demand from certain of his students to have him expelled from the school. It was a solution that would save his face for both parties. Training with the King of Talking Hands. Okay, so Yip approached Wong and asked him to train Bruce privately at his apartment of Wong's father, where Wong was living at the time. This new arrangement could be interpreted by Bruce as not so much getting turfed out of the main school, but rather getting special attention from the clan's best fighter. Okay, so that was even better for him, right? And then he probably trained so hard he became better than all the other ones. Okay. There's a lot more interesting information here. He fights for St. Francis and he wins boxing. He wins a gold medal for boxing. So anyway, came back with one. Gary Elms versus Bruce Lee. Maybe Bruce Lee defeated him. Goes into great detail. Despite the win and what it meant for his school, Bruce wasn't pleased with his performance. When Frank Klausnitzer approached him to offer his congratulations, the fighter shook his head in a show of frustration. "What's up?" Frank asked. "I couldn't knock the bastard out." Bruce said he was annoyed that all of the fighters had to wear 16-ounce gloves, which seemed to him so large as to resemble pillows. padding in the gloves had spread the power of his punches over too broad a surface, reducing impact. Bruce also felt frustrated that he had not quite mastered the quick upturn of the wrist technique at the end of his punches, which to his way of thinking had also diminished the force of his strikes. I'm going to train until I can get that punch working, he said. That's the way I want to fight next time. So there's another key. See, he's producing all these keys for you, right? These secrets to how you can become more successful, totally successful, fully successful in your chosen field, your genre, that which is probably your natural talent, your skill, right? Something that you can develop and you can be better than someone else at it, right? You can be the best of the best if that's your aim, right? To be the top dog, hot chick in your particular field, right? The expert with that expertise. Train until you can get that particular thing working, right? Working best for you, etc. That's the way. Okay. He also mentioned Bruce Lee also mentioned he wanted to box the St. George's fighter Peter Burton, who had won his bout by TKO, technical knockout, just prior to Bruce's match. However, given that Burton was several weight classes above Bruce, there was no way that either his or Burton's school would ever sanction such a contest. Later that evening, Bruce Lee scribbled the following entry into his diary: March 29, 1958, win the inter-school competition, champion against 3 years champ Gary Allen, place St. George's School. Despite his critical evaluations of his performance in the tournament, Bruce Lee's classmates, along with the teachers and staff at St. Francis Xavier's College, treated him like a conquering hero. Bruce was the king gorilla of the whole school, his brother Robert recalled. So if you like this video, give us a like, subscribe to our channel, add your comments below the video, then go share this with all your family, friends and others who may really want to go in depth and know all about Bruce Lee. It's a very interesting book. That he actually had fights. He lost a couple to start with, but then he became this tough guy that was picking fights, walking around with his little gang, challenging masters and all sorts of people to show his fighting prowess, etc. Okay, so he has a fight with a guy called Handsome Foe, who's a member of a local triad, but his triad group were now looking for Bruce. They want to beat him up, right? And kill him if they had to, if he should venture into their territory in the future. Fearing for his son's life, Grace conferred with her husband, and the parents decided that all things considered, their son's immigration to the United States where he was born should be bumped up as soon as possible. So he gets $15 from his dad, and his mother gives him $100. Okay, so she obviously thought more of him. Her father's tidy-whitey with the money, I suppose. And they've sent him off to stay with friends, possibly in America, and then he works at Ruby Chow, which he hated. He didn't like that, but he did it, and then he finally was able to break away from it and do his thing. This is interesting. Skip Ellsworth, for example, even 20 years after Bruce's death, wouldn't speak to anybody about Bruce's fights in Seattle who hadn't first been vetted by Jesse Glover, and even then he only touched on the details. When Bruce and he went into an all-black pool hall, this Afro-Americans, near 23rd and Madison, there was an incident involving some black guys. When Bruce and him drove a truck to Montana to pick up some freight, and they stopped at a cowboy honky tonk tavern restaurant for dinner, there was an incident involving some cowboys that were hanging out under a mercury light in the parking lot. When Bruce and he were leaving the Kokusai movie theatre one night in the International District in Seattle, there was an incident involving 3 black dudes. The list goes on. Bruce had altercations all the time. Nothing serious, because with Bruce an altercation went like this. A guy would try to hit him and he would miss, and Bruce would hit the guy and the fight was over. On average, an altercation lasted a second and a half, maybe 3 seconds, depending on if there was a discussion first. But invariably, it would be a matter of someone swinging and missing, and then Bruce hitting the guy, and down he goes. And Bruce had this thing where it was extremely important to help a guy to the floor, so to speak, so that guy wouldn't hurt himself. The guy would immediately become unconscious, so Bruce would have to grab him and help him to the floor. It is the way he put it. Like if you smack a guy and he hits his head on the concrete, he gets concussion and he could suffer badly or die from that. So at least he had that compassion, right? To knock the guy down, but hold on to him and chip him over, sort of thing, and help him on his way down. The emergence of speed, skill, and power. We can read that in your own time, at your own pace. Something very exciting there.